You will follow my orders exactly.
I got something for you! Make it stop!
Anime abandoned now continues.
Our next series may seem like it has nothing to do with Pilot Candidate, but there are some similarities that you may not give it credit for. For one, it's about a boy piloting a mech against monsters bent on destroying humanity. And two, it also blows chunks. Alright, I'm fibbing a little. Blue Gender isn't nearly as bad as Pilot Candidate, not by a long shot. It's got a complete story, kind of, and there's an actual focus on the main character, so we learn about him. Unlike Candidate, where the story had the attention of... Damn it! I'm sorry, I know we're supposed to be talking about Blue Gender, not about Pilot Candidate. We already beat that horse to death and buried it. Let's not dig it up again. Blue Gender is definitely more frustrating than Pilot Candidate, if there is a direct comparison to be made. While I don't think Candidate had a chance to be good from the get-go, Blue Gender had an interesting premise and setup, but wound up failing to deliver. It follows the story of Yuji, a teenager who was cryogenically frozen because of a disease that never seems to affect him. He wakes up decades later to find out that giant bugs, dubbed Blue, because fuck you, have laid waste the kingdoms of man. Having been woken from his sleep, he is led to the last refuge humanity has left in outer space by Marlene, a cold soldier who only cares about completing her mission. By the skin of their teeth, the two make their way to Second Earth, where they find out why exactly Yuji is so valuable, and what his sickness means for humanity's future. Here's a spoiler.
It's really stupid.
Alright, the setup isn't the most original in the world, but there is possibility, and to the anime's credit, it does make you want to learn more about what the Blue are and how Yuji figures into all of this. It's good that the series has this, because the mystery is the only thing that's keeping the audience's attention. Otherwise, the beginning is a complete dud. Though Yuji goes through a nice character arc over the series, at the beginning he's an obnoxious whiny brat.
This isn't real. This can't be happening. Oh, please. Make it stop. Make it stop. I've had enough of being alone in this freaking place. You understand?
Yeah, sure, his disposition is understandable and perhaps relatable, but this kind of trait isn't exactly likable in a main character. You want to be able to root for the hero of the story, not be annoyed to death when he opens his face hole. If you want to have your protagonist be a fish out of water, you have to be able to rein it in and not let it be his only defining characteristic through most of the story. In other words, it's not that he bemoans his fate and bitches about how Marlene doesn't care about anyone left on Earth. It's just that it seems like that's all he does.
I get it. As long as I'm alive, you're happy because you still got your precious sample, and this is just a mission, isn't it? Well, what about Joey and Robert? You saw your own people die right in front of you! How can you think nothing of it? Huh?
It gets to the point where you find yourself on the side of Marlene, and even the story seems to frame her cold reasoning in the right, which makes it all the more confusing when she has a heel turn towards the later half of the story and finds herself going against her superiors on Second Earth. And that's endemic of Blue Gender. Our main characters go through a sort of character arc, but it's not gradual or seamless. It's actually quite jarring. Marlene's eventual softening and more caring nature comes through by the end of the first act, which is to be expected, but Yuji's arc of being caring but confused to bloody psychopath back to being caring again comes out of nowhere. Oh yeah, it's revealed that Yuji's sickness is the source of what the show calls B-cells, and the leaders of Second Earth figured that they could harness the power of these B-cells to make more powerful mechs to fight the Blue.
The B-cells could be best described as an overly powerful antibody. Their instinct is to aggressively kill off whatever germs might invade the body, and if left alone, they could be harmful to the body itself. But imagine what might happen if the combative instincts of the B-cells could be linked directly to the central nervous system of a machine. By combining a sleeper with a specially designed armor strike, we've created a weapon that harnesses the very nature of the B-cells to rid the Earth of the germ infestation known as the Blue.
Not that his disease is the source of an infection that could be used against the Blue to wipe them out, but that his disease can somehow make him a better mech pilot. What is it with anime and making their heroes genetically predisposed to being mech pilots? To me, this plot point seems like it was written on the fly, like there was no plan for an endgame at the beginning of the show, and my theory proves more and more viable by the end, but we'll get to that. All they had was that Yuji was valuable because of his disease, but no one quite figured out how that would be used in the story at large. So they just whipped up this cockamamie theory that mechs could be built around these bullshit B-cells. Oh, and speaking of bullshit, the Blue are about the biggest pile of bullshit antagonists I've ever seen. Apparently, these bugs are super creatures, able to evolve faster than the humans can kill them. Seriously, these critters evolve faster than Pokemon. Their weak points are exposed earlier on, but then they start evolving armor to protect it. And it goes further than that. Somehow, the Blue have evolved several subspecies that are ultra-specialized, like being able to siphon power from electrical lines, and possess people. And yes, these species appear once each, and only once each. I don't think the Blue evolved to ward themselves against natural predators. I think they evolved so that the plot can pull bullshit turn after bullshit turn. You find yourself screaming at your TV as the show progresses, as the setups that Blue Gender so carefully build wind up being nothing more but bullshit payoff after bullshit payoff. You find out later that the sickness that Yuji and a few others have, what the show calls sleepers, were the source of the Blue, and that they are meant to be agents of destruction made by the Earth to try and rid itself of humanity. Yup, we're taking a fuck humanity turn.
The B-cells were born of the very Earth you've been so desperately trying to save.
They were what?
The Earth knew all along. In time, mankind would give birth to the Blue by its own hand, and then we would awaken. And when we did, we would sacrifice our egos, surrender our will, and we would discover the true purpose of the powers we've been given.
Towards the last act, when Yuji's B-cells are causing him to go insane and violent and one of the sleepers goes rogue and leads a bunch of Blue onto Second Earth, is when the story kind of sputters out. It all builds into a non-climax where Yuji, having been slapped back into sense by Marlene, confronts the sleeper and winds up just shooting him in the head before the rest of humanity's fleet blows up that part of the station. And yet, this is still not the end. No, the end comes when Yuji and Marlene find the mystical core of the Earth, and then Yuji merges with it to become a star baby or something. Okay, that's certainly an ending. By the time the show ends, there is such a disconnect between what began the show and how it ended that you have a hell of a time believing you were watching only one show. It's like the writers each had their own idea of how the show should be, and instead of compromising on one, they decided to Frankenstein them all into one gigantic mess of a plot. But the most frustrating thing about Blue Gender is that there are some good ideas here at play. They just never got a chance to explore them. During the first few stages of Marlene's and Yuji's relationship, there was an engaging back and forth between someone who grew up during the Blue Scourge and someone who didn't, between optimism and cold hard pessimism. Additionally, there are interesting elements about the society of Second Earth, namely that it's Bone City! Seriously, everyone in Blue Gender is hardcore fucking. There is so much casual sex going on here, I'm surprised their main export isn't syphilis. The station has co-ed locker rooms, yes, just like Starship Troopers, and even has its own area solely for the purpose of its citizens to bang. And the show is not subtle about this in the slightest.
Hey there. You like what you see?
Weren't those two supposed to be monitoring that control board? How does anyone get anything done here? Yes, I've tried turning on and off the router, but I still can't get on the internet. Yes, I'll hold. Come on, come on.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean you.
Speaking of Starship Troopers, the bugs themselves are shamelessly vaginal in design. You don't need to be Freud to see the symbolism of Yuji's dream here.
Listen, I could be dead by tomorrow, or maybe seconds from now. There's just no way of knowing.
I'm not sure what the intent of having the blue look like vaginae are, but there sure is a lot of vaginal symbolism going on. Even the machine that the one insane sleeper uses to battle Yuji looks suspiciously like a uterus. Well, that might just be me. I tend to look too much into these sorts of things. Like here, for example. Totally a vagina. And that. And that. Holy hell, that's a sopping wet. Okay, wrapping it up. If I have to give Blue Gender one thing, it's that it fails only by the virtue of the fact that they tried to reach further than its grasp. The show feels like it has 10 different ideas fighting each other to try and get screen time, and instead of coalescing into a single story, they just rip the story at the seams. Still, a story with ideas is better than one without. So concludes part 1 of our look at Adult Swim. Tune in next week for part 2, where we'll look at some more, shall we say, beloved titles. Till next time.